Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Brownsville Matters. We have with us today Tara Putegnat, who is with the Brownsville Historical Association. You are the executive director, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Well, thanks for coming in. We've talked to all kinds of leaders of Brownsville in the arts and education, but we haven't had anybody from the historical. Well, we certainly had a few, maybe a few historians, but not anyone who's in charge, so to speak, of an historical association. And yours is very old, right?
Yes. We just celebrated 75 years last year. So we were founded in 1947. We think we are the oldest in the valley. Mm-hmm. So we've been touting that for a while. Yeah.
Well, we're certainly one of the oldest cities in the valley. Right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Brownsville was one of the first developments along the river, and we have so much history here, wonderful history.
I was reading a book recently by a woman who was here during the Mexican-American War, and I don't know why I didn't know this, but a lot of the families that came here and were at the original Fort Brown actually got housing in Matamoros.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Matamoros was
much more developed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and certainly a little more sophisticated.
Oh, yes. There was a road over there that still exists. I think they call it the Avenue of Americas.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that was built by, I don't know if it was built or improved, but whatever it was, the American soldiers built that road.
Yes.
Because it was, it didn't drain well, it was just a kind of ox cart path. And but it's interesting that was built during the Mexican-American War. It still exists. It's still a major thoroughfare there. But a lot of the people got lodging over in Matamoros in that time. And some of it sadly forced, say,
yes.
We're going to take half your house, we're going to live here while this war goes on because we don't have any place to live. But Matamoros was much more developed, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How much older is Matamoros than Brownsville?
At least a couple hundred years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and actually Charles Stillman, the founding father of Brownsville, lived in Matamoros for years before he lived on the American side. And he spoke English and Spanish fluently, which was really what most Anglos did here.
Didn't he come from New York or
Connecticut?
Connecticut, yeah.
Weathersfield, Connecticut. Mm-hmm.
And his family was often in Connecticut, right? He lived here.
Yes, he first traveled here when he was a teenager with his father. They traveled a lot in Mexico, and then when his father passed away, he basically stayed here. He traveled back and forth to the East Coast, but
he's like Richard King. He made his money off of cotton, right?
Cotton during the Civil War, one of those blockade runners. Very smart businessmen at the time.
It's interesting. We often think of the quote illegal trade as coming from south to north, but there's a good time along this border that's gone the other way. It still does.
Exactly. Yeah.
It still goes both directions, but people don't think about that much.
Right. Yeah, and you can't separate the two really when you talk about our history. Matamoros and Brownsville for sure are very interwoven.
I wish I could remember the name of this book that I came across. It's a series of kind of a journal and letters from a woman who was here on the border at that time.
Was it Helen Chapman?
Chapman, yes.
Yeah, that's a great resource
Helen
we have.
Chapman.
Letters from Brownsville.
And she went to Corpus, and she wrote about how beautiful Corpus was because, unlike Port Isabel, where she spent some time, it had bluffs or cliffs, so you could live up high and catch the coastal breezes, and plus had a beautiful view of the bay.
Right.
So it was really interesting to see how the landscape was described in her time.
Yes.
Another thing I learned from that book was that the number of people who came through here on their way to really the gold rush. They would come through Brownsville on their way to Mazatlan. Yes. They could go by train a lot of the way across Mexico, and then they go up to San Francisco and into the gold mines. So a lot of it. We often talk about this area being a crossroads.
Yes, exactly. It's exactly what we are.
And even way back then, we were crossing,
Yes.
right?
And various means of transportation too, right? I mean, you had the river, and then you could go by stagecoach or train later. So, yeah, it's a really diverse area for that.
And in those days, how far could you go up on a steamboat up the river?
Oh gosh, there's stories about people going close to Laredo area. Yeah, it just depended on, the course of the river and what was in what was along the way. Yeah.
What kind of draft the boat had, obviously.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And if it was, I'm sure in the, certain times of year and maybe in the spring, if there were spring rains, you could probably go a long way up that river before running into the rapids.
Yes.
There are some little rapids up there.
There were some rapids, sandbars too, so it just varied.
But it took a long time because it's, as I recall, reading something about it's roughly 100 miles, kind of straight line to Roma.
Roma. Exactly.
And something like 190 by river.
Yes, yeah. No, it's a long stretch, but the way we see the river now is just so small compared to really what it was.
Oh yes, I saw a picture just the other day, fantastic picture, taken in 1910 or so, and it was colorized. And the river was 150 yards wide. It looked like that. It was taken right here where the International Bridge is.
Oh yes.
And so you saw the steamboat there and the river boat and people with ox carts loading. And you see some of the buildings that are now part of TSC.
Exactly. Yeah, the old Fort Brown.
So if I gave you a grant of $50 million for the Historical Association, what would be kind of your dream project? What would you like to do?
Gosh,
would you renovate something? Would you save something?
Oh, definitely. I mean, well, you go downtown now and you see a lot of great revitalization and restoration work. So
Larry Loff has done some incredible things. I know he's not the only one. There's a lot of other people, but I think he's been at it the longest.
Yes, and he's one of our board members, so he's been a great asset. So I mean, our museums are in historic buildings. They always need maintenance and work. So definitely some of that money would go to those buildings, and probably to build a new facility. We have archives and photographs and a great collection of historical items. So we'd love to have a research center, one place where people could go and research and interact with those artifacts and material that we have. So.
What artifacts do you have that you feel are underutilized? That they need publicity. It's a great treasure, and people aren't aware of it.
Sure. Well, we do have what is believed to have been Juan Cortina's sword. That is on display at the Stillman House, so that's not hidden away. People can come see it. But we have a great collection of the Pan American Airways, China, and a lot of the stuff that was on the planes. We have great photographs. We just have an extensive photograph collection that
Have they been digitized?
We're in the process, but it's a labor of love.
I think it's so interesting that so many families are digitizing their family histories.
Yes.
Taking the old, I even did it for our family. My mother was a voracious photographer, but everything was in slides.
Oh, nice. Yeah. We have slides. We have film.
When she died, there were 180 carousels of slides. But fortunately, she was a librarian, and she was meticulous about labeling everything.
Oh, wonderful!
So she not only had the date of the photograph, but the names of the people in the photograph and where it was taken.
That's wonderful.
Well, she was obsessive about this. She was OCD at some level because, my cousin about 3 years ago gave me a table that he said, "Oh, your mother had this table and I have it, but I don't need it, and I figure that I should give it to you." And so he gave it to me. I was unfamiliar with it, but it was clearly like an old card table, where it had hinges and all and you could move it around easily. And so I turned it over just to see the bottom, and she left a note saying, "This belonged to me when I was 9 years old, and I had it until I was 18, and I used it to do homework."
Oh,
so she put notes on. I mean, it's a historian's dream. Someone leaves notes and tells you what about.
Yeah.
She did the same thing with. We went into her house and we started taking photographs, and you turn them around, there's a note on the back telling you.
That's good. That's like a treasure.
I know, right?
You can't find that very often.
So you have photographs there, collections that you're digitizing, but are they curated? You know what they are?
For the most part, we know
when
where
they were
are,
taken,
and we know where they came from. But yeah, it's just a matter of documenting them properly, and we have a software system to document that. So it takes a little bit of labor. We do have volunteers and interns, which is really helpful. So
do you have the Runyon photographs?
Those are in UT Austin.
Those are in Austin.
Yeah.
But what is the story on this? I don't really know the background. He was here. He lived here.
He was here for some time. He's got great photographs of our downtown area, but also of the Mexican Revolution. That's sort of when he was in our area, and a lot of those gory, horrible photos that you see of the wounded soldiers. That was Runyon, and they're so clear. I mean, it's just the quality is
the
wonderful.
resolution is spectacular on some of those.
Yeah.
His work reminds me, and I often get it, although I think he's further back in history, but those photographs of the Social Security Administration where they sent, must have been 7 or 8 of the photographers, is it Rubenstein?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And some very famous photos in those collections, but they're they're free because they were government produced, and so anybody can use them.
Yeah, you can request images from Austin from the Runyon collection, and they are all digitized, so those are nice.
People must have thought. They must have given him hell at the time. Just saying, man, you're always taking photographs. What are you doing? Just a street. You're taking a picture of a street.
Right. Yeah. And we also have a really beautiful textile collection now. I don't know if you're familiar with the Costumes of the Americas Museum.
Oh, no, I'm aware of that. I thought you meant just textile patches.
No. Well, we have some of the Victorian era clothing that some belong to Elizabeth Stillman. But our more recent acquisition, I guess you could say, was the Costumes of the Americas collection. So that needs a lot of documentation and
those were collected
storage.
Kind of via Pan American, right?
Yes. So it was just the women of Brownsville who traveled in Mexico or South America and acquired the costumes and brought them home. Yeah, it's amazing. What
was it? So that organization, I believe. Didn't it get its start in San Antonio?
Yes.
And then this was a branch of it or something?
So they're global now. I mean, you can find chapters everywhere. It's sort of like Rotary, I guess, if you wanted to compare it to that. Yeah.
And in those dresses are in the Children's Museum?
They've moved to the new location, which is on right by the police station behind the historic Brownsville Museum. It's an old historic building. It was actually the baggage room for the railroad station. So, yeah.
So your association manages or owns all of those facilities, like the Fine Arts Museum and all that stuff. Does your association own them, or do you manage them?
So that's a very good question. So actually, Fine Arts Museum is separate from us. We're only doing the historical museums. So the buildings that we are in are owned by the city of Brownsville. We lease them, except for 2. We do own the Alonzo Building on East St. Charles.
Okay.
Familiar?
Yes,
it's like a New Orleans style, Creole style building, and then the Loud Ellis Ranch House, which is in Linear Park. That belongs to us. But all the other buildings, we are tenants.
Yeah, you're tenants in them.
Yes.
But do they give you a good deal?
I think so. Yeah.
And then you pay for them based upon entrance fees and special events? And
Well, it's a long-term 99-year lease agreements that were signed before my time, but it's I believe somewhere like $1 a year, something like that, because the nonprofits in there.
Okay,
So
it's a really good deal.
Yes, yeah.
But you pay utilities?
We do not.
You do not.
Yeah,
Okay,
so that's covered
so
by
it's
them.
a really good deal.
It's I think it makes good use of our historic buildings, and yeah.
And then the fees that you take in for special events and interest, what happens to those fees? They go for collections, to staff?
Right. Yeah. So we do have staff. So we have an operating budget. We have to maintain that.
Sure. Yeah, it's always a challenge.
Yes. Yeah.
How many staff do you have?
Right now we have 10. So they're not all full time, but yeah. So, and we've got a lot of different properties. So we do a lot of juggling, but it works. Multitasking, I guess.
But Sable Palms is not part of yours, right?
No, that's run by the Gorga Science Foundation.
Okay. Larry.
Larry Loff. And that's such a great resource, though.
Oh, it
the
is,
birding
yeah.
out there is beautiful.
And it's a great
the house.
historical house. And that whole Sable Palm Sanctuary has a beautiful history
Oh, yeah.
in and of itself. Do you have a lot of people who come, winter Texans?
Yes.
Who come?
Yes. So this is actually our busy time. So coming up here in the fall, we'll get real busy. We do walking tours, historical walking tours downtown with
Dr. Knott.
Tony Knott. Yeah, exactly.
He still does that all the time?
He does. In fact, we're getting ready to start our haunted history tours in October.
Oh, that's excellent.
So,
Excellent.
yeah, those are a lot of fun.
So what's the most haunted house or building in Brownsville?
Gosh, you
Gorgas.
Yeah, probably. I would say anywhere at the Fort Brown. It's all kinds of stories about hearing the cavalry come through in the horses, and I'm sure you've heard some of those.
Oh yeah. Well, I officed in the regiment house for 5 years, and I didn't know until about my second year there. I didn't know that it was considered, one of the more haunted buildings on campus, where people would talk about on the veranda that you would sometimes see an old soldier sitting there in the night. And
Really?
yeah.
Did you ever see anything?
No, I never had any of that. But as Dr. Garcia says, she never saw anything either, and people would just accuse her of being insensitive to the supernatural.
Maybe, yeah.
You need to be a believer, and then you'll be sensitive to these things.
Exactly. Yeah.
I did. I did see some. I did not really see it, but feel. People often say that you feel a draft or something like that, and I will admit to have been in my office late at night, and I felt a draft, and you start spooking yourself. You say,
really?
Well, what was that? And the lights flicker or something. You say, I'm gonna go home. Goodness. I don't need to be here right now.
I'm done for the night. Yeah, we've had some of our staff, our maintenance staff, who've been around for 20 plus years, have definitely had experiences. Yeah.
Well, have you ever heard of the Resaca boy?
No, I don't think I've heard of that one.
So a boy who he's along the Resaca at Fort Brown.
At Fort Brown,
And people report that they were just walking along, and 10 o'clock in the evening, just walking along the little jogging path they have there, and this little boy would come up to them, and he was not one of those what we might call misty ghosts. He looked real, and he would come up, and they would just think he was just a little boy out late. Where are you? What are you doing here out late at night? He said, I just wanted to come and tell my mama that not to cry anymore. I'm okay.
La Llorona.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Tell my mama I'm okay.
Interesting.
And then, of course, they start saying, well, you need to come with us. You need to come. Let us find your mama. And then he disappears. That sort of thing. He vanishes into the mist.
Wow.
Resaca boy.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would do about that.
I just wrote a piece for the Magic Valley Cooperative Magazine on Ghosts of Fort Brown.
Oh, great.
So I put that story in there. And the one about the horses is a great story. I didn't have room for it. There's so many, so many good stories. But
Right.
tell me that one, the one about the horses.
Well, what I've heard is just about students walking on campus late at night, and that they swear they can hear or feel horses running right by them.
The one that I heard back in the day was that there was a guy staying in the old what they used to call the barracks. They used to put people up overnight because it was back in the '60s. So there's a convenient place for it. We'll put you up over there. And so this guy stayed there visiting overnight, some guy from Austin or whatever. And next morning he gets up and he tells whoever is president at that time, he says, "I didn't know you had an ROTC program." And he said, "We don't." He said, "Well, I heard those horses, in the night about, early, like 5 a.m., I heard a whole troop of horses go by. And
That's amazing.
right in the front of them. I heard them clearly." And he said, "We don't have ROTC or horses."
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Those are the types of
those sorts of stories do make the rounds. And then you have the other thing that you need for good ghost stories is you need, first of all, buildings of age.
Yes.
You need that. And you need houses that several generations of people have lived in.
Yes.
That's very helpful. So you have
True.
the spirits that are within the building itself. Old cemeteries are helpful too.
Yes.
Not a new one, an old one.
Yes. Yeah, we have a fairly old one, and we do some ghost tours in there as well. We have one that's really fun. It's called the Murder Mystery Mayhem Tour, and we get volunteers to dress up at like the people that are buried in the cemetery. So we're only focusing on scandalous type murderous stories, and so. When you join the tour, you'll stop at each grave where there's a character, I guess you could say.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so it's neat. They sort of talk like they are that person. They dress up.
These tours go on all the time or just on Halloween?
That one we just do Halloween, closer to Halloween. I believe it's the 30th. So
you go on a walking tour through the cemetery.
Yes.
And you stop at graves and the character tells you the story of their death.
We have someone leading the tour, so he kind of takes you from grave to grave. So, and he's a volunteer. He's a board member as well. Gilbert Hernandez. He's great, and he's got all kinds of personality. So he brings it to life. That's for sure.
How many people do those tours? How many people go on them?
We try to limit it to about 25 or 30. If not, it gets a little
per
too
group,
big.
or you do, you do like one an hour, or
We'll do 2 in one night,
Two in
so
one night,
sort
okay.
of back to back. Yeah.
children. Take children.
You can, sure, if they're
Just didn't
if
know
they're brave enough.
Is
Some
it-
get
Is
scared.
it R-rated? For violence.
No, nothing like that. Not too bloody or gory.
In Dia de los Muertos, are there a lot of people in the cemetery for that?
There's some, yeah, and I know that
I mean, for family, whether they take the offerings.
There's some
food.
that might, but I wouldn't say it's it's not nearly as visited as Oaxaca or some of the parts of Mexico, but. And I think the Midi district this year is trying to organize something.
Yes, well, I was talking to Daniela the other day from the Midi Cultural Foundation, and she was saying they're bringing in some people from Oaxaca to talk about Dia de los Muertos and to demonstrate the making of the arts for which they are famous there.
Ofrendas, I think they call them. Yes.
And then they're trying to expand the sort of thing you're doing.
Yes.
Across the cultural district.
Right.
I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, I
It's a
think so
beautiful
too.
idea.
Yeah. And we actually have a Dia de los Muertos themed exhibit up at the Costumes of the Americas right now. So it's called Soul of the Tejuana. The Tejuana is a traditional costume from Oaxaca. And it, you might remember Frida Kahlo wearing it, sort of a long dress with lace at the bottom. So the altar there is sort of dedicated to her, and there's a little story about her life. And so.
I went to her home. Have you been to her home
Never.
in Mexico City?
No.
It's wonderful.
Really?
Yeah. It's of course it's always crowded. There's lots of people there all the time. But it's and they took the central home and they built a museum around it with, of course, her work, her artwork, and costumes and dresses.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, I need to see that.
It's a beautiful little tour. So if you ever get a shot at it, it's well worth doing.
You had a very interesting life.
Oh
Definitely.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
A very interesting life. I went. I was there about 4 years ago. My wife and I took 20 students to Mexico City for study abroad program. We were there for 5 weeks, I guess. And so we went to Xochimilco and to there and the pyramids, of course, all the usual things that you must do. The other really impressive thing there in Mexico City that I guess probably because all my times in going there in the years before, I was I was young and I was single, but this time I had a young child, and we went to the Children's Museum, and it's just fantastic.
Really?
Just an incredible facility. Carlos Slim had evidently donated $1 billion or something to build an incredible children's museum. So, we have a very nice one here, but with $1 billion, you can imagine.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
What
They're
you
beautiful
could do.
museums, and the archeological museum there is wonderful.
Well, this is in that same general area
Okay.
of the other museums, and in that Chapultepec Park where you can just walk and there's another museum, and you go another 3 miles, another museum.
Exactly.
One thing I always like about great cities is that somehow, somewhere along the line, people with vision set aside huge tracts of land and made it sacred. You can't touch this. I don't care how much you want it. This remains a garden. This remains a forest.
Like Central Park in New York.
Like Central Park in New York. Can you imagine how much has been offered for them to be able to chip away at that park?
I'm sure.
But the thing that makes that real estate valuable is the park.
Exactly.
To have a view of the park, you pay twice as much probably.
Absolutely.
If not 3 times as much.
Yeah.
And then Chapultepec, and then in Madrid and Sevilla and other great European cities, London, they've all managed to set aside, and not just 20 acres, but huge tracts of land.
Sure.
I think the one in Madrid, I forget the name, Queen Isabella Park, or there's that Sevilla. It was about 200 acres that's set aside in the middle of the city.
Yeah.
And we've done a bit of that here in Brownsville.
Well, we have quite a few parks. Yeah, we have nice parks. Dean Porter Park is beautiful, I think. So.
But aren't they wanting to expand that?
I know the zoo's looking for expansion. Yeah, that's what I understand. So they're sort of landlocked.
I've always wondered why they didn't, maintain that one and do something up on one of the northern Resacas where there's, get out around Los Fresnos. If you take from the expressway to Los Fresnos, like where they're building Madeira.
Yes,
the
development.
That general vicinity would have made for a good, I think. It's easy for me to say, but I'm thinking of 2 things. A lot of land and Resacas.
Exactly.
Because the zoo is attractive because of the Resacas.
Oh, definitely.
It makes it special. Definitely. You come from a family of an old name family here.
I do.
How far does the Putegnat family go back in this region?
Yeah, we probably came to Brownsville in the 1850s or 60s. So definitely by the time of the Civil War, there were Putegnats here already. So we've been here a long time.
And what did they do?
Well, various businesses. You might know them more for the pharmacy, the Putegnat building downtown. La Botica was called. So, and then my side of the family had the laundry business, Model Laundry on West Elizabeth. So yeah, we've still got Putegnats here, which I think is good.
So, well, the reason I was asking is because a lot of people come here and they were into farming.
Mm.
or citrus or something
Yeah.
like that. So do you have any of that in your background?
On my mom's side of the family, I
Agriculture?
do, but my mom was from Willacy County, from
Okay.
Raymondville,
Well,
so yeah,
Then you have to be.
a lot of farming there.
What else are you going to do up there, right?
Yeah, definitely. Dry land farming is what they call it. They don't have the river like Brownsville does. So
You have to pray.
yes,
You have to pray a lot.
That's true. Yeah.
What are your dreams for the association and the facilities that you have? 10 years from now, what would you like to see?
Gosh, I'd really like to increase our visitorship. I think that we've gotten better at that, but a lot of people, at least locals, don't even know the museums that we have. So I like more awareness for sure, and like I said, I'd love to build that research center because I just think that we need a permanent place where we can keep regular hours to have researchers come by and students and teachers and all walks of life come see what we have.
I've done a couple of book readings there over the years, and always has a nice crowd, nice facility.
Yes,
It's
been fortunate.
I've always loved it. You put together your staff puts together a very classy
Thank you.
event for the signing and the sharing of
Good.
readings, and a comfortable historical environment, obviously, and always a good turnout. I always have 50, 60 people there, and I know you do them all the time.
Yes, we tried to. We'll have you back anytime.
I'm happy to come.
Yeah.
Well, I've typically done it when I have a new book, and
Right.
I don't have anything new on the horizon at the moment, although I did do the audio book of J. Frank Dobie's anthology.
Oh,
And that was a labor of love for me because he was really Texas's first true folklorist, I guess. He collected stories of the vaqueros and wrote a lot about northern Mexico, actually. Maybe I should do
didn't realize.
maybe I
That
should
would
do
be
that book.
that would be great.
It's not
Definitely.
mine, but I did this was the first J. Frank Dobie. I thought it was actually the first J. Frank Dobie book on Audible, but it was a second. There was someone had done one about 5 years ago. This is the first anthology, though, where you get a tremendous cross section. His greatest hits, you might say, the
Interesting.
best of his works from his. He wrote books on the Longhorns. That was the title, Longhorns,
Okay,
rattlesnakes.
real
Just
specific.
Just
yeah,
kind of
just
pick out any
narrow in.
topic about Texas, and he had a book kind of with that title, and he would go out and collect the stories about these from the people who lived on the land. Mm-hmm. He himself had grown up in Beeville on a ranch, and he was the real deal. He was a cowboy. He herded cattle. He raised cattle. He hunted for silver mines down in Mexico on a mule.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. I didn't realize.
So a lot of in fact, he was the first one, I think, to formally write an essay that said the American cowboy has his roots in the vaquero. That this was what we call today cultural transference.
Yes.
Because most of the people coming from the east, they had big plow horses and stuff. They didn't have the Mustangs. They weren't part of what we would call the hacienda ranching culture.
True.
And he made the case of that's why you have so many Spanish words in ranching language, because that's where it comes from.
Absolutely.
So that was kind of new to have this gringo, scholar saying, "Listen, it's true."
Right. Yeah. No, that's
and he gathered his stories for that. So anyway, I was talking to them up at Texas State, where they have I guess the greatest collection of Texana, because UT kind of passed over all that, and so Texas State has made that staked their claim.
Okay.
They have works of McMurtry, and they have works of McCarthy.
right.
No Country for Old Men, and
Yes,
the
those are
papers
great.
of these great writers. Not all of them. You don't have all of McMurtry, but some. And I think they have all of McCarthy's works.
Oh, wonderful.
But Steve Davis, who's the curator of that collection up there, where they have also all the Lonesome Dove Museum, that's a real interesting place. And he had curated this anthology of Dobie's works, and so he and I were talking one day, and I was talking about wanting to do some of Dobie's works, like the Longhorns and Rattlesnakes, but I didn't know exactly how to get permission. And he said, "Well, I've written an anthology. You can do that."
That's wonderful.
He said, "That way you get all of them in one book." And I said,
Sure.
"Well, yeah, I'd like to do that." And so
That would be great. We're always looking for Texas History Month in March. We're always looking for book signings or things related to that. So
well,
definitely, that would
I
be
could
great.
do that. I can't sign the books, but I can I can
Sure, lecture.
refer
or
them
come
to the audio book on Audible.
Okay.
and they can get it that way.
Sure.
It's been pretty popular. It's started out in the first few weeks. It was number one in its category on Audible books on Texas history, but that sounds a little bigger than it is, because often when a book is new, it gets a bump just because it's new.
Exactly.
And but it has steady sales as on the Audible, and actually the Audible version helped the print version, as it often does. People
Yes.
will either buy them together, or they'll say, "Well, I'm not an Audible person. I don't like audiobooks. I'll just buy the book."
Right.
Are you?
Yeah.
Are you an
Yep.
Audible person?
I like the real book.
You like the
I
real
have-
thing?
I have to have the paper. I'm old fashioned, I guess.
You are a
But,
historian.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I can certainly listen to a book, but yeah, just something about holding it.
I told my
keeping it in
friend,
front of you.
Dr. Cook, who's like you, but he said, I got to smell the book.
Yes.
And I
yeah.
told him, I said, if you'd been around in the days of Aristotle when they transitioned from scrolls to books, you would have said, no, I got to have the scroll.
Yeah. I guess it's whatever you're used to. My generation, we didn't have an option. It was paper books. I don't know. Now kids learn all kinds of ways, so it's
Well,
different.
I often have both. I'll have the Kindle, or I just have Kindle on my phone. I used to have the actual Kindle, but now I just typically have it on my phone.
Yeah.
And I just like that I have on my Kindle collection, I have over 1,000 books. I like to be able to take my library wherever I go.
Yeah.
Can tap
That
into
is
it.
nice.
And the other cool thing about it is that you can highlight, sections that you find particularly interesting. And you can keep your notes.
Oh.
And it's a searchable thing. You remember, how often you want to find something in a book, you say, I know it's here. There's
Somewhere.
some paragraph here, about Will Rogers. I know it's here. And so if it's on Kindle, you just put in Will Rogers, it'll find it for you.
Oh my
Do a
gosh.
searchable.
I
It
didn't
gives you a
realize.
searchable database for it. So, but a Kindle doesn't look great sitting on a shelf.
It certainly would save some room, but
Right?
yeah, there's something nice about a real book. So,
Okay, so whenever we get to March and History Month,
Yes,
invite
absolutely.
me and I will come.
Sure. I know where to find you.
Okay, yes, I'm right here.
Now I do.
I'm right here I'll go at this very desk most of the time. Thanks for coming
Great.
in.
Thank
Enjoyed
you
having
so
you.
much, Dr. Strong. I really appreciate it.